All right, now, comic books and books. We have new X-Men, 3 new X-Men specifically to talk about, and a new Space Ghost book. That's kind of what we got, so let's jump into it. Hello, nerds, and welcome to this week's episode of The News as it pertains to comic books and books. No discussion of current storylines, story arcs, or any of those kind of details is going to happen here per se. I am, after all, a one-man organization and can't read every book that comes out and report on it and any of the news therein. But we can talk about new announcements and major changes as they pertain to any of the publishers that we follow, or just generally nerdy literary information in that sense. So let's get into all of that, shall we? And also, if you dig what's going on here, there is a much more up-to-date and possibly relevant, because it takes a second to get these sections posted up, so probably much more up-to-date version of the news in long form I like to call The Week in Nerddom over on the main channel, which you can find linked in the description as well as at the end of this video. That show covers many more points of interest in the nerd community, in the pop culture community at large, and so definitely go check that out. Now let's get into all of those literary notes, shall we? So we have a trailer technically this week. It is the announcement trailer for the 3 new X-Men books that are launching, 2 of which are more new than the first. So what I mean by that is we have the 3 titles we have are, I know they're in here, we have Uncanny X-Men, we have Exceptional X-Men, and we have just straight up X-Men. So I guess 2 are not as new, and then the Exceptional X-Men is newer, but they're just restarting these lines, and restarting is not accurate either. It's just, they've existed previously and now they exist again. It's just not a reboot. Anyway, so the creative teams on these 3 projects are as follows. We have Jed MacKay and Ryan Stegman on the straight X-Men title. We have Gail Simone and David Marquez on the Uncanny X-Men title, which is a little questionable on that creative team. We also have Eve L. Ewing and Carmen Carnero on Exceptional X-Men. These were announced last week at South by Southwest, and they gave us little synopses blurbs, so I'll read those real quick. So for the X-Men book, we have Krakoa is no more, but the X-Men fight on from their new base in Alaska. The X-Men raise a flag of defiance, join Cyclops, Beast, Magneto, Psylocke, Kid Omega, Temper, formerly Oya, Magic, and Juggernaut as they assemble against new forces, battling for destiny and philosophy of the mutant species. Mutant business is their business. So that's the X-Men title, and then we have the Uncanny X-Men title, is as follows. Outlaw heroes once again, the X-Men embark on a new mission, making themselves at home in the Big Easy. The X-Men protect a world that hates and fears them. Join Rogue, Gambit, Nightcrawler, Jubilee, and Wolverine on explosive superhero adventures. Uncanny as ever, the X-Men are back to save the day, mutant style. So this one is where Wolverine has landed after the Krakoa situation, so that's gonna probably be huge. Also has Rogue in it, and she's been kind of the center of some controversy recently, so that'll be interesting how they deal with that on the comic book side of things. And then from there, we have the Exceptional X-Men. The synopsis here is as follows. Mutant Kind's 2 greatest teachers mold the next generation of X-Men. Kate Pryde has returned home to Chicago following the war with Orcus. Having stepped away from the world of mutantdom, she is nevertheless called back into action as she crosses paths with a trio of new young mutants, Bronze, Axo, and Melee, who clearly need training and guidance. Unfortunately for Kate, Emma Frost thinks so as well. So the artwork that they're presenting for this promotional stuff seems to be kind of forgetting about all of the woke stuff from the very recent past, because if you look at the artwork of specifically like the White Queen, again you take a look at Rogue, you look at Psylocke, they're a little bit more, I mean definitely not to the level of like say 90s comic risque, but they're a little bit more risque than they have been in recent years. So maybe just maybe we are getting back to a place of let's just make quality content that people want to read and not worry about how much virtue we have. Now, again, I did mention that Gail Simone being the writer on one of these projects kind of leaves a little bit to be desired, but it's at least a step in the right direction. Let's hope. We won't know until they launch. I did not apparently put the launch dates in my notes because amazing notes. I'm telling you guys, I take the best notes in the world. But as we get closer to the launch dates on these, we will be talking about them, at least for follow-up's sake. And then we have a piece of regular old news. This regular ass news says Space Ghost is returning, and not Space Ghost Coast to Coast Space Ghost, but the serious actual superhero of Space Ghost. Dynamite Comics has secured the rights for the good old talk show host. These guys are going to be relaunching the series with David Prepose and Jonathan Lau as the creative team. The new books look a bit edgier, obviously, than the Hanna-Barbera cartoon, because yes, but it is all of the returning characters, so that's pretty freaking awesome. No official day, but there are 2 links in the description if you want to go check out all of the information on that, direct from Dynamite, and then the launch trailer, I believe is what that YouTube video is. Looks great, looks freaking fantastic. As you can tell by the artwork that you're looking at on the screen right now, it's gonna be a very different thing than what we got in the cartoon, but this is not the first time that we've seen it get that serious in comics. This has happened previously, and we did talk about it, but that was a few years ago. So yeah, go check out Space Ghost. It's gonna be great. And that leaves only our suggestion for the week, and this one's a little bit controversial, mostly because of the art and not for the reasons you're probably thinking, but comic book suggestion for the week is Joker Year One. This picks up around about the time of right after Killing Joke, where Batman's still early on in his days of being Batman. So it's Batman Year One, happens roughly around the same time. And honestly, Chip Zdarsky and Giuseppe, the Giuseppe dude, the artist, that's the controversy right now. But Chip Zdarsky is writing a freaking fantastic book. Like, this is as close to explaining who the Joker is as I feel comfortable getting and still keeping it interesting. If you were to get into any more actual possibilities of where he comes from, who he is as an individual, I feel like then you're going to get into territory that just nobody should go. And Chip Zdarsky walks that line beautifully in this. Like, I cannot speak highly enough of this book. Now, the artwork, Giuseppe, I'm not going to say his last name properly, and I'm sorry. Or was it the Andrea Sorrentino? One of the two. One of the two of them is doing artwork that is potentially AI generated, so maybe the art isn't going to be exactly what you want it, but the story, it is all about this story. Zdarsky has not really been one of my favorite writers previously, but this is good stuff. Go check out Joker Year One. It will be worth your time, if for no other reason than the story alone. That is your suggestion for comic books this week. That brings us to the end of the video, nerds. Thank you very much for joining me for the news. Once again, there is a full and probably much more up-to-date and recent episode of the news, the full-length version, if you will, called The Week in Nerddom over on the main channel, linked down in the description, and probably link popping up somewhere around my face right about now. So click on that, go check that out as well, or if you prefer your news in more truncated pieces, then by all means just stick around here and go check out some of the other stuff we offer on this channel. Thank you very much for joining me. We will see you in the next one. Before we go, always remember, nerds, that if it is generally nerdy, it's probably here.